Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the Book Clubs Across Borders session between Pakistan and Afghanistan. Unfortunately, because of COVID circumstances, our students in Afghanistan, in Pakistan from Muzzafarabad cannot join us for the session. Therefore, we're going to be hosting the session, and we're going to be speaking with you, students in Bamyan. It's really fortunate that we have the author of the book that you all have been reading, Fearless, Amazing Stories of Women from Pakistan, Amina Sheikh, who's going to be with us. So I would encourage all of you to ask her as many questions as you possibly can. Anything from the book that you want to speak to her about, anything about her selection, about her stories, why she actually decided to do what she did. And I'm not going to take up a lot of your time because I want this conversation to flow between you and the author, which in itself is an amazing opportunity. So Amna, thank you so much for taking out time and doing this. We really appreciate it. And we are very, very sure that once the students get to interact with you by understanding your reality, your situatedness, and your embeddedness into this project, they will be in a better position to not only read the book and be inspired by it, but also to start their own journeys in multiple ways as they progress in their lives. So without further ado, I give the stage over to Amna first, and then we will move to our friends in Bamyan and take it from there.
Well, first of all, thank you so much for having me. It's a real pleasure and really exciting to be, speaking to people across the border. I'm just going to take 30 seconds to make sure the volume in my background is turned off. I apologize for this. Just 2 minutes, I'll be right. All right, I am so sorry for that. I'm sure this is the situation in everybody's household right now where the home is the office, it's the school, but I can see that you are all in one place in Afghanistan. That's really nice. There's no lockdown where you are?
So it's no quick update. For Afghanistan, we have partnered with LLC, the Lincoln's Learning Center, which is a offshoot of the American Embassy.
Yes, I'm aware, yeah.
Yeah, so to ensure that the students are able to connect, because the connectivity in Afghanistan is not very, very productive or very strength. It doesn't have a good strength for hosting video conferences. So that's why you see the students all in one place. And fortunately for us, there is no lockdown in Afghanistan, at least for as long as you're following SOPs and you're maintaining social distancing. So we're very fortunate with that.
Okay, all right. So you're all together, and that's really nice. That's really, really great to have that privilege. It's becoming a special thing now, right? To be able to be with other people, to sit together as a group. And it's something that I think we've all missed in the last, I know I have, in the last year, the opportunity to not be stuck at home and to get out and to, work with other people. So first of all, thank you so much for having me. Thank you for including my book. I'd love to talk to you guys about any aspect of the work that you are interested to know more about. But I just want to start by saying that Afghanistan has a really special place in my heart. And I don't say that facetiously because you are here and I have to say that. In the last 2 years, I've had the privilege to do a great deal of work on the ground with Afghan refugee communities in Pakistan. So I know a little something about your culture, about your history. And so I'm really excited to be speaking to young people from the other side of the border, because especially in 2020, I did a lot of young people, did a lot of work with young Afghan people in Pakistan. So for me, this is a really wonderful opportunity to look how perspectives are different and how they're the same. Yeah, so I'll just, I don't know, are you going to be moderating, Alia? I know I should say, my name is Amine. I know that makes it fun to pronounce, but it's Amine.
Oh, okay. So Amina, yes, I shall be moderating, but the way the conversation flows is I would like our students in Bamyan to start telling you about what they understood from the book, which was the character, which woman stood out and why their story resonated with them. So we'll take their questions and then we will come to you and speak to you about a few basic things like why you wrote this book, why writing this book is important, why highlighting these women is important, and how were you able to, make a selection out of so many amazing women. How did you narrow them down? So I'm going to move to Bamyan first, and then we'll come back to you. Bamyan, over to you.
Okay, good noon. At first, hello, good noon. I hope everyone is fine and doing well. The things that I have learned from this book, it could be a lot of things and different things, but most importantly, there are some bigger points there that I've learned. For example, one of them would be that women have the right to do everything and to take part in society to improve. And I have learned from this book that in the past it was like that, and somehow it was women were working with their brothers to improve their society. And okay, right now it could be enough. Thank you.
Did you want me to feedback and respond side by side, Alia? I'm just not sure of the format.
You could, if that is more comfortable to you, we could do
It's
one
not
person
certain,
to one.
I think. No, I'll let you deal with your usual format. Just let me know when I'm supposed to speak.
Yeah, so usually what we do is we take a few questions from the students and then we come to you and then we'll go back to the students so that the conversation is like not very one person specific. It's more like we get an essence of what the students want to know most about so we can have more detailed conversation on that. Bamyan, back to you.
Thank you. There is another one of our participants. She wants to share her idea. Ms. Mujal?
Hello to everyone. I hope you all doing well. I've learned many good things about this book. First of all, it takes a lot of challenges for being successful, especially for women. I learned this that nothing can stop us from achieving our goals and dreams. We can achieve our goals and dreams by working hard. Thank you.
Okay. I think for now it was from our side. Thank you.
Hi everyone. Hi Amane. This is Hurmat, and I've been contacting with you and buzzing your phone all the time. So I think we can take the conversation to your end, and I would really like to ask you, even though you have mentioned in this book that why you have written this book, but I would really like to know a detailed answer from your side that why did it struck with you that you want to write this book? And again, that as Alia asked you before, that how did you research on these women and how did you narrow down that, that these are the women that I want to add? And I did get an essence, a structure out of this book that you have included women from all walks of life. But was there any point where you had to, really pick and choose? There's this person I should add and this person I should not add, or this is something which will, change the narrative. So I would really love to know your experience on, collecting all of these stories.
Sure, no, thank you so much. And I'm really happy that you guys got the key message that we shouldn't let circumstances stop us. I teach a class here in Pakistan on social entrepreneurship. And yesterday I was talking to children of your age about what makes up a social entrepreneur. And the reason I start the conversation with this is that I feel a lot of the women in the book were actually social entrepreneurs long before that term became something that people should use. And during that conversation, we were talking about how sometimes things which seem normalized right now, and by that I mean that there are things that we see so much in our culture or around us or with people that we think these things are okay, right? The norm or what people usually do seems okay. And there is something, I don't know if many of you have heard of this gentleman. His name is Muhammad Yunus, and he talks about, he was a Nobel Prize winner, and he founded the Grameen Bank, which was a microfinance bank in Bangladesh that was focused on women's empowerment and empowering the poor. I'm sure you all have heard of microfinance banks. They're pretty much everywhere in the world, but he was one of the first people who got involved in this space. And he said something which really stayed with me, and I think might be a great way to start talking about Fearless. He said that in the future, there will be museums to showcase the horrors of poverty. And I think that's a very, very powerful thing to say, because all around us, we see people, or we see, communities, we see people who are suffering, right? And poverty is one of those things, I think, across the world that we can quite easily understand what it means to not have resources, what it means to be hungry, what it means to not have education, all of those things, right? And what, if you look at his words, he said them several years ago, I think over a decade ago, he said, in the future, there will be museums. And what he meant by that, if you guys have heard of, like in Europe, there are a lot of museums to document the Holocaust, which is what the Nazis put the local population through. And now people look at those museums and they walk through them and they wonder, how could somebody have allowed this to happen? How could people allow this to happen? So when you're living in the moment, it is hard to imagine that in the future we will be judged. So Hormat has asked a question about what is a social entrepreneur. A social entrepreneur is a pretty wide-ranging definition, but if I had to pick a really, really simple one, I would say it is somebody who is passionate about and wants to bring about social change. If there is an example that I could think of from Afghanistan, I might pick Shukriya Khanum, for example, right? You all know Shukriya Khanum? Yes? She's an Afghani politician, female leader. I'm not sure if you've all heard of her, but her story is really, really amazing. If I was writing Fearless for Afghanistan, I think she would definitely be in it. She's so inspiring. Her life is not just about her own work, but it is about the value that she can bring to other people's lives. And that's kind of how you look at social entrepreneurship. It's not one way. It can be done in a for-profit way. It can be done in a not-for-profit way. It can be a movement. It can be a business. There's many ways in which you can be a social entrepreneur. And the other point that I thought one of you who started the conversation with, you made the point about historically, in history or in our cultures, in our region, we've seen women achieve a lot. But in the last maybe 50 years, we've seen that freedom almost be restricted, and women are now struggling to do some of the things that women took for granted in the past. And I think that's a very interesting point. It is something that I was personally aware of. I think, when you look at historically, for example, Pakistan, we have a lot in common with Afghanistan when it comes to our gender norms, our social norms. We have a shared history, obviously. We weren't always Afghanistan and Pakistan. At one time, we have been the same country, ruled by the same people. We have a lot of historic exchange. We have a lot of cultural exchange. We continue to actively learn from and be influenced by each other. I'm not talking about at the political level. I think we can agree that politicians or ruling politicians in most countries are not people who we can be easily inspired by. But I mean, people-to-people contact. There's a lot of people-to-people contact between Afghanistan and Pakistan, both historically, both in modern and ancient history, as well as today. And that is why I think, a lot of the themes that are in the book are very relevant for both our countries. So Hurmat asked me why this book. I wrote this book because I have two children. I have a son who is 6 and a daughter who is 12. When my daughter was a lot younger, she used to read a lot. She loves reading. We all love reading in my household. I think we're very, very privileged that way. We grew up around books. We all read a lot of books. And she started reading this book called Goodnight Stories for Rebel Girls, which was a book that was written about 5 years ago about amazing women from around the world. So it included women from all sectors, from all countries. It was a very, very simple book, written for very, very young children. So it was written in a fairy tale style of once upon a time, there was a little girl. That is literally how all the stories start. So very short, very simple. And the idea was to make people aware of how many incredible women there are around the world. But one of the things that I noticed when she was reading this book and similar books, there are many other books. There are, great women from history, women who've rocked the world. One of the things that I noticed when she was reading these books was there was hardly anybody from Pakistan, if ever. The only person who gets any mention from Pakistan is usually Malala, and well-deserved. I'm not saying she doesn't deserve the mention, but that is the only person from Pakistan who ever features in this book. It is the same issue for Afghanistan. Not many women from Afghanistan make it to these books either. And I began to wonder why that was so. It's not that the country does not have incredible women or that there are not many, many interesting things happening and have historically happened. And then I realized that I didn't want my child to read about white women. I wanted her to read about women who look like us. I wanted her to read about women who've done amazing things who are Muslim. I wanted her to read about women who've done amazing things who have brown skin like us. I wanted her to read about women who are from South Asia. I wanted her to read about women who had the difficulties that you and I have, not the difficulties that somebody in East Africa faces or somebody in North Carolina in the US faces. While all stories are inspiring, there's a lot of research that proves that if you don't see yourself in the story, it is a lot harder to imagine that one day you can be there. A good example of that, and I think a very popular example of that might explain it, is if you look at the Black Lives Matter movement in the US. Are you all familiar with that movement, maybe? Black Lives Matter? Yeah? Well, it's hard to tell with the masks, but I'm going to assume that that's a yes. If you're not familiar with it, I would recommend that you look up the hashtag BLM, or you just look up Black Lives Matter. It's a large movement. It's a movement whose time has come. But the idea is that Black people in America feel that they have not been adequately represented. They're not adequately treated as equals. They have been marginalized. They have been discriminated against. And now they want to, there's a whole history of it. And there's a specific reason why they say their lives matter, because even their lives are at risk just because they're Black. I think we can all understand this completely. After 9/11, it is hard to be a Muslim. I don't know if you guys feel this, but anytime there is any kind of incident in the West, does your heart not stop? And don't you start thinking, I hope it's not Pakistani, and in your case, I hope it's not Afghani, I hope it's not Afghani, because these things matter, right? This is the perception the world has of us, of warmongering, violent people who don't want the world to progress, who want to take it back to some kind of archaic medieval time. And that is part of the image that I didn't want my daughter to have. I didn't want her to think, and then later, as my son is now reading, he's 6, I don't want him to have that image either. I don't want him to think that we're one kind of people who can only do destructive things. I want them to know about amazing people who are doing amazing things. So that's why I wrote the book. But how did I select the women? That was definitely much more difficult thing to do. As Alia guessed very much at the beginning, when I first put together the short list, and I don't mean the long list, I mean the short list, there were 180 women on that list. So how did I get to 50? That was very, very hard. So we decided to do it. I had a friend helping me out with the illustrations, and we thought, how do we decide these women are all amazing? All their stories need to be told. So we thought, okay, let's make sure there is somebody from every sector, right? So first we decided to do a sectoral grid. So, some things were easy. Like when you started looking at the armed forces, there are only 2 women in Pakistan who've made it that high in the armed forces. So that was an easy selection. But some sectors were really, really hard. Politics, there's been so many incredible women politicians in Pakistan. Arts and culture, I think in Pakistan, at least, women lead in the arts and cultural space. So whether that's artists, whether that's musicians, whether that's painters, whether that's sculptors, it was very, very hard to decide why one and why not the other. So then we applied a second lens. We thought, okay, we have to make sure that women from all periods are being taken care of. So we shouldn't ignore women in history. Pakistan was founded in 1947, so we started there. until now. So we didn't want to make it that it's all older women or all younger women. So that helped. So that helped us, sift it out. And finally, I did a focus group. I decided that I was writing this book for young people, and I would love to hear what they have to say. So for sectors that were really saturated, where there were like hundreds of women's names that we had to select from, we did a short list, and then we went to them and we got them to vote, and we talked about why we were choosing one name over the other. And some of the reasons were really, really interesting. I think the thing that I said about representation earlier, younger people wanted to see faces that they had not heard of before. So they wanted to see new faces or people whose stories were not that famous. Also, they wanted stories where the story was unexpected. So I think the best example I can give you, if you were a Pakistani, there is no way that you would not have heard of Fatma Jinnah, for example. Fatma Jinnah was the sister of the founder of Pakistan. Everybody knows about her. You are taught about her from when you enter school until university, you constantly hear about her. But I included her in the book, not just because obviously she was a very important person, but because her story is often mistold. By mistold, I mean her as if she was just a nurse for her brother. She took care of Qaid-e-Azam when he was unwell. She was by his side when his wife left him. It's like she was his nanny. But that's not just I'm sure she took great care of her brother. I'm sure she was a great sister. But what they do to her in the popular storytelling is they take away her entire autonomy. They take away all her decision-making. They take away all her power from the story. So when I wanted to retell it, it's all facts. It's not that I've invented something. It's not a fictional narration. She was a political leader. But when you ask a Pakistani child, who is Fatma Jinnah, I will tell you two things. She is the sister of, which means by accident of birth, she happened to be related to the founder of Pakistan, or they'll tell you she's the mother of the nation. And there is nothing wrong with being a sister or a mother. Those are beautiful roles, which I think many women have the privilege to be in. Especially, I think a mother, it's definitely, especially in our religion too, it's such an exalted role. But when you take a politician and a popular leader and you reduce her to mother, then you take away all her work. You take away everything about her. So I think that was kind of how we tried to shortlist. We tried to make sure that, but is it a book that I'm ever going to be satisfied with? Of course not. There are many women I felt should have been there. Many women I regret whose stories could not be there. But it's that's the thing about a book. I think you have to, your publisher will say, that's it, stop writing, give it to me. Hormat, you've asked me how long it took me to complete the book. This is an embarrassing one, guys. It's when I started, when I was younger, I don't know if any of you want to be writers. When I was younger, I imagined that I would grow up to be two things, or at least maybe that's what I wanted to do. I wanted to be in academia. So I wanted to be Dr. Amne Sheikh. There would be a PhD involved, obviously, which meant that I was thinking that maybe I'd also be Professor Amne Sheikh, right? Let me assure you, neither of these things happened. And both of them came from my love of reading and my love of writing. So when I started writing this book, in my mind, I was like, this is such an easy book. The stories have been told. I just need to retell them in an engaging way. I'm not writing, and I kept saying that to myself, I'm not writing crime and punishment. This isn't hard. I should be able to do it. But it took me nearly 2 years. And the reason for that is complicated, partly because obviously I work, I have a family. My son was really young when I was writing this book. I switched publishers in the middle, which meant I had to rewrite the whole book. Initially, it was supposed to be even longer stories, like each story was supposed to have 4 pages. As you can tell, it is now 1 page, which meant that I first wrote a version of it, and then I wrote the short version of it. So I have written this book so many times at this point that it's in my blood or something like that. But yeah, it took a lot longer than expected. But yeah, so that's it for me. But I would love to hear what you guys want to say and what you want to ask.
Thank you so much. I wish the way you're talking is such a good orator. I personally feel that maybe we should not be speaking and only ask you to talk and tell us more and more and more. But this isn't what this is about. It's about a conversation. And conversation means that we have some queries or some topics that we'd like to speak more on. Having said that, I'd like to go to Bamyan and ask our students there while they were going through the book, which story resonated with them? Who was their favorite woman from the book? And maybe we can tell them more about their stories from your longer versions and notes. So, so Bamyan, over to you. Why don't you all tell us women from the book that you thought were very fascinating and whom you would like to know more of, and then Amine can tell you more about them, because like she explained earlier, for coming up with a very concise summary of a person's life is one of the most difficult tasks, because there is so much to know about them, and then to pick and choose which angle or which element to keep is usually up to the writer. It's their story. They are the ones behind the wheel. Obviously they are controlling how it goes, but I feel that when you're dealing with real life people, it the responsibility becomes much more. You don't want to leave something out which you feel might not be important, but then in a historical narrative it ends up becoming extremely important, because you don't want your work to be a bone of contention. You want your work to be a testament to their existence, to their individuality, to their zeal of life. So, I mean, we would all love to know, amongst the women that you read in the book, which were the ones that you really, really liked, and were there any women in the book that you knew of from before? So, these two questions coming over to you, Bamyan.
Thank you, Alia. Thank you so much. Before our participants want to share, I just want to quickly share my idea about the book, because throughout the book, I have found that I am the same age as Malala, and definitely we have a lot of story that we share together. um, when I read her story, I have just remembered that how much challenges we have faced when we were going to school back then. So I have started the school right after the Taliban was thrown away from the Bamyan, and then there was no place to study. We used to study under the tent, and it was so unhygienic. Definitely, there was nothing. There was no chair, no facilities, nothing. And beside that, it was like we have faced a lot of the social norms and all. People used to blame us like we are going to school, or somehow they always showing their heads toward the girls who are going to school. And now I'm seeing that how the situation and the community has been changed from that time. It's a matter of almost 15 years or maybe 18 years. Now the students are having more facilities, definitely, and families are supportive of their girls' education. And lots of things has been changed. So this was the story that I really loved, and definitely we knows Malala and her achievement before also, and now after reading this book, it's much more clear for us. And there is a lot of other similar stories in Afghanistan also, which has been not told. I mean, which is not shared with the community or with the world, and it's always referred as a mother or as a sister. We are also experiencing this here, and still women are not referred by their names. It's always by their somehow male partners. Maybe it's their brother, sister, or brother or in-laws or whatever. These are the similar stories definitely between the South Asian countries. Thank you so much for this opportunity. And now I would like to ask our participants if they have their ideas and want to share. Is there anyone? Okay. Yeah.
Hello, everyone. love one of this amazing woman from Pakistan. Her name is Fatima Jinnah. I love her personality because she is an active members woman of Pakistan and important situation and supported her brother to find Pakistan and she do the most important work from Pakistan to achieve the women rights and to show the women's ability that the women's one of the women that I found and I'm interested in her is Jihan. I really love her story. And in Afghanistan also we have many challenges. When girls want to be singers, musicians, they face many challenges. They face challenges in their homes. Their families will not allow them. As well in communities, they face many challenges. But Noor Jihan, she motivates us to achieve our goals and to go after our dreams. And she's a great motivator for us. Thank you.
Okay.
Okay. Sorry, we have a small technical issue. Yeah.
Okay, thank you for giving me the chance to share my idea. One of the
Can
stories
you
that I
please,
love.
just a second, can you please come in front of the camera, maybe in between these two
yeah.
tables, so we can see you?
Yeah, let me change the camera.
I hope there is a way. Oh, thank you.
Okay, can you see me now? Yes, that's great. Yeah, I want to say that at first, thank you. And one of the stories that I loved about this book, it was about Nurjan. In the past, especially right now, it is like that also for women. It's so hard to be a singer or taking part in movies and acting like a movie star in Muslim communities. But in the past, it was around 19s that she acted very well, and many good movies and about more than 1,000 songs have been sung by her. And that was something interesting for me, that in a Muslim community in the past, especially in the past, there was a singer or someone from women that taking part in movies, and it was somehow, yeah, not somehow, a lot inspiring for us, that it's not a problem that we are Muslim or anything else. We can take part in any part we love. Thank you so much.
Is there any more? I think it's from our side.
Thank you so much for sharing that. It's so interesting to hear, that you guys have enjoyed the stories and been inspired that time. And I love that so many of you were. I'm not surprised by the choice of Malala. It's really interesting. But when I shared, we done a storytelling exercise with the refugee community I was talking about, and the two Pakistani women they felt most inspired by were Malala and Asma Jahangir. So I'm not surprised by Malala's edition. I think her story is particularly very, very inspiring. I had the privilege to meet her a few weeks ago online and to do a session with her. And I can tell you that she is just as wonderful and warm and everything that you would expect of a person in her position. But what I already said in the chat, I know I'm not supposed to have favorites among the stories. And of course, I enjoyed researching and writing about all the women But Fatma Jinnah's story was personally really touched me, because I think what we took away from her is that we call her brother the founder of Pakistan, but we forget that she was also a founder of Pakistan. She co-founded Pakistan, and we take that away from her. And so that is very, very, it touches me at a very personal level, makes me realize that we do that to women all the time, that women in history, their names are forgotten. I thought the point that you raised about women's names and how they are taken in Afghan communities is particularly poignant. And I've been following the movement within Afghanistan to reclaim, by women, to reclaim their names, to be able to say their names. It is very powerful. And I think, you know, I was thinking the other day that we live in such an interesting time right now, where we simultaneously live in different centuries at the same time. So different parts of the same space. And this is true for Pakistan, it is true for Afghanistan, it is true for India, Nepal, so much of South Asia, Southeast Asia. It is true for us that at the same time, we are in the 21st century, like this session right now, we're in two different parts of the world. We are able to see each other. We're able to talk. We're able to discuss ideas. It is super modern. We're able to do this in the middle of a pandemic. It's amazing. But right now, as we are sitting and talking, there are parts of Afghanistan where people are probably doing something they've done for 5,000 years and nothing has changed. And I know it's true for Pakistan for sure. You know, I don't know if you guys have heard of the Indus Valley civilization, which is what, 5,000 years old. Have you heard of Mohenjo-daro? It's a ruin in Pakistan, which is from a civilization that existed a little over 5,000 years ago. This civilization had, you know, piped water, they had proper drainage. We can tell all of this from those ruins. But the reason I bring them up is that they also had this very famous bullock cart. It was a wooden cart that was pulled by a bullock. And we see that in history books. And if you look up Mohenjo-daro online, you will see this very particular kind of cart, a wooden cart. What is amazing to me is that this technology, or whatever that cart is well over 5,000 years old. It is still used in parts of Pakistan because nothing has changed. You did. Okay, amazing. So you have a sound idea of the Indus Valley civilization then. So much has not changed in 5,000 years for people in our country. But I love what you said about Noor Jahan, and I want to share something that is not in the book with you, because Alia, you said that I could, and this was an opportunity to do so. So in the 1950s, Pakistan has been through several martial laws or military rule, if you will. And in the 1950s, we were at one of our older military in power in the country. And there's a university in the city of Lahore, which you may have heard of. It's Pakistan's second largest city. And they were doing a concert to raise funds for flood victims. And Noor Jahan, who by this time had become reasonably famous, she was supposed to sing at the event. It was her first public performance in the newly born Pakistan. And the song that she wanted to sing, that's what she told the announcer. It's called Mujhse Pehli Si Mohabbat. It's a very famous song of hers. But it was written by the poet Faiz Ahmad Faiz, who, if any of you know, is a revolutionary poet who wrote with very left politics. At this time, when she wanted to sing his poem, he was in prison because the government has said that he was trying to overthrow the government. So he was in prison for treachery. So at this time, singing his poem in public at a government university was a very dangerous thing to do. Of course, the organizers begged her. They said, please don't sing this song. Please sing anything else. And she said, fine, if I don't get to sing this, I will not sing at all. And not only did she go on to sing this song, but it was aired across the country, because at that time, radio in the 1950s was obviously, there was no internet. Television was also not as widespread as it is now. And Radio Pakistan was the primary medium of communication. And she sang all this. And Faiz himself was so impressed by what was considered this very daring act that he said that this song now belongs to her. And he signed over the rights to this song to Noor Jahan. And the reason why I bring up this particular story is because I think Pakistan and Afghanistan have been through many political upheavals. We've had a very contentious history as countries. We are both young countries in some ways, but we're also ancient civilizations. So I think sometimes we struggle in that. And of course, Noor Jahan was not just breaking political taboos, she was breaking social taboos. She married many times. I remember when she married her second husband, she used to joke that he's 10 years my junior. I mean, even today, I'm sure in our cultures, you will agree that this is a very, very big deal. And, but she never let it bother us. She just continued doing what she was doing. She was gifted. She wasn't afraid. She was also known very well to be, she was very generous. So after she passed away, there was a lot of written stories about how when she would come to her recording studio, for example, she would come with gifts from abroad. When she would travel, she would come with bags full of makeup from abroad, and she would give them to all the chorus girls. Girls who nobody gives attention to, girls who nobody thought were important. And I'm talking about a very long time ago. Now with greater movement, greater travel, ease of business, people can find foreign products more easily. Back when she was doing these products were worth their weight in gold. She was just handing them out to girls who nobody thought were important. So basically, she lived very freely, and she was unique, and she never let any of the things that people should have said, that she was divorced, didn't matter. She had a difficult childhood, didn't let it matter. She believed in her passion, and now she inspires male and female musicians in Pakistan. And it's really interesting for me to hear that she's inspiring people in Afghanistan too. And I think, we both our countries have a strong and beautiful cultural history of music and the arts. And it is something that is worth fighting to preserve. We have to fight in Pakistan. I'm sure you have to fight in Afghanistan. A fight doesn't have to be a violent thing. I don't mean with guns. I don't mean by, taking aggression on. I mean by persisting in doing what you do and sharing that beauty with the world. So thank you so much for sharing that with me. And I hope you enjoyed the little tidbits that I've shared with you.
Thank you so much for that, Amane. And just adding on to the amazingness of Noor Jahan, because we are an archive, we do intensive research on lots of really fascinating facets of history and our culture, which generally does not get a lot of traction. So adding on to Noor Jahan's stature and how unique she was, I'd like to let all our audience know that we interviewed a gentleman called Naeem Tahir in Pakistan, who was during the 70s looking after the Arts Council. And the Arts Council was at that time the place where all of the artistic endeavors and work used to get done. And this is the time in the late 60s, early 70s, that Yahya Khan, again a military dictator, was in power. And there was an international music conference. And Noor Jahan called Naeem Tahir, and she said, I want to take part in this, and I want to represent Pakistan. To get a gig at the International Music Conference was one of the most difficult things to do. And like Amane just said, that the most popular song, like a song that became synonymous with Noor Jahan, was Mujhse Pehli Si Mohabbat Mere Mehboob Na Maan. And she said that she will play that song for a music cassette that you had to send to the International Music Conference to be nominated for being a part of their program. And Naeem Tahir said that, I know that this is one of the most amazing songs that you have done, but if you want me to mentor you and be a part of this journey with you, then I will not agree to sending you for you to send this song. And he asked and he rehearsed and they prepared another song, which was a song that she had sung before, but which was not popular, which had not been really received with the same aplomb that Mujhse Pehli Si Mohabbat Mere Mehboob Namang had been received. But they still recorded it. He was very happy with it. He sent it, and she was the only South Asian, not woman, men. She was the only South Asian singer from a singer that was, accepted, appreciated by the International Music Conference. And just an FYI, Lata Mangeshkar, who is known as one of the most legendary and the most phenomenal voices from this region. She also sent her tape, but her tape wasn't accepted. It was only Noor Jahan and the unique, unique quality that she had with rhythm, with understanding sound, which with her rehearsals that she was able to create, that was recognized in the West. And it's not like Amine also explained that during that time, getting international recognition for singing for singing our national our classical music and songs was not really a norm, and people really did not have the same universality that we find in the world today. So she was definitely, I mean, a classic and a true legend in her own way. And I would encourage all of you to find out more about Noor Jahan. And by the way, we had so Google Cultural Institute is an organization that promotes life. And for Noor Jahan's birthday, the Google Cultural Institute reached out to us and asked us to create a special exhibition as a tribute to her. And it was the one exhibition that we took great pride in and pleasure. And it was fun looking out for facts on her, which weren't very easily available or commonly found. And we created an exhibition which is available online. I will ask Herma to share that web link of that Google Cultural Institute exhibition, which is available in all regions. And you guys can click on that link and get to know more about her. And on that note, I would like to say a very, very appreciated thank you to Amane for taking out time and being a part of this journey. It was wonderful listening to you, and I'm sure our friends in Bamyan were absolutely thrilled and they thoroughly enjoyed this. And I hope Amane
so much for having me.
I hope you can take out more time and be a part of a few other of our conversations, because this book will be traveling across Afghanistan and Pakistan as the year progresses. And inshallah, by the end of the course, we will have this book across 24 cities in Pakistan and Afghanistan. And
that's super exciting. I think it's a great initiative. I love that we're reading together. Of course, I'm so honored that my book is one of the books on the list. And yeah, thank you for reading, and thank you so much for your generous feedback.
And on that note, I'm going to move on to Bamyan and ask all of you to maybe let us know what you thought about the session, and let Amine know how much you enjoyed reading her book, or any other thing that you'd like to say to her before Hurmat shares some testimonies that we have from Muzzafarabad as part of the session. So Bamyan, over to you.
Okay, let me share the book that I've read. It was great, and I've learned, we have learned many things from that. I want to thank a lot, and I want to share something else. Also, there are some questions, and if you mind, I need the answer. The first question could be, what makes you to write this book, and what you want from the reader to understand from this book exactly. And lastly, about the challenges you have faced when you were writing this book. I'd love to hear about them. Thank you so much.
Okay, no, thank you so much for that. So I talked a little bit about why I wrote the book at the beginning. Did you want me to go into any particular aspect of that? But the idea was really just to uh, make people or make young men and young women from our cultures, from our communities, realize that we don't just need to look to the West for examples. We don't just need to look outside of ourselves, for example. There are many women in brown Muslim societies who are already doing amazing things, and those can serve as great inspiration. You asked me about the challenges in writing this book. I think, if I'm being honest, the biggest one for me is discipline. I like to say I'm a chaotic creator. So I do a lot of things that are within the creative space. I write, I work in the cultural economy in Pakistan. So I work with a lot of talented people who are traditional craftspeople. And therefore I have a lot of opportunity to create, but my process is probably the least linear process in the world. I'm the kind of person who literally sits up at 3 at night all of a sudden and will start writing, and then nothing will happen for 5 days. So I wish I had something very profound to share in this regard. I do not. And I sometimes wonder if it is the lack of discipline that keeps me from churning out more. I'm sorry, there was a second question somewhere in there, which I can't remember right now. You asked me about my challenges, and that is definitely lack of discipline and really just sitting and doing things 9 to 5 in a cohesive way. And the second is why I wrote the book, but there was something else that you asked. I'm so sorry, I can't remember that.
So the second question was just what inspired you to write, which kind of was answered by you because it was overlapping the first question that they asked. So real good.
Okay, all right. So
Any other questions, Bamyan, before we say bye to Amine?
I have a question. Since Amine, you told us in the beginning that you had to, leave out. You made a list of more than 150 women, and you had to leave out so many women out of this book. So, are you thinking about writing maybe a second part of this book? Maybe it can become a really good series. Since these stories keep on happening, they keep on developing, we keep on finding new, more amazing women in our country. So I think if it becomes a series, so it will be a really, really good collection.
So I did think about that. Yes, please, go ahead.
Yeah, sorry. Like for us, there's a question that how difficult it was to ensure the inclusion and from all sphere that women are working. So I mean, ethnicity, religious, or its sexual and gender orientation.
That is a really, really good question. And I think so somebody, you guys, we just privately chatted about this a little bit as well, but there is somebody from the queer community who is included, Nargis Mabalwala. But I will say this because this book was primarily targeted at Pakistan. There are a lot of high profile women who have chosen not to be out, who might be queer, and I cannot take the onus of that. So only when somebody is willing to be publicly queer, I can take that and publish it. There are definitely queer women in Pakistan. There is definitely a significant LGBTQ community. But given that you do not want to, I mean, it's the simple principle of do no harm, right? Like the idea of writing about people's life is definitely not to put them in any kind of danger. So that was definitely the lens that I had on. The one thing that I think is sort of missing from the book is a trans person. That is something we had. It's a long and complicated story. So we had a trans person in the book, a very inspiring person, somebody I've actually had the privilege to work with outside of the book as well, because a lot of my work is in the gender empowerment and women's space. So I have a lot of opportunity to meet and work with incredible women every day. However, right before we went to print, there was a sexual harassment and murder case filed against her. So obviously the publisher insisted that we drop her. Of course, nothing was ever proven. But the reality is that when you write something, particularly with a formal publisher, they have a legal department that will want to be careful of anything that you say in print. I think it was kind of what Alia also referred to, that when you're writing about somebody, there's many things that you can write, but there are many things that you have to be careful of as well. And this was a big learning experiment for me, right? Because most of us, at least when I write creatively, I write for pleasure. I'm not thinking about a lawsuit at the end of it. So writing for Penguin definitely taught me about that, because those are the kind of things that you need to think about. I was aware, very, very aware of the protection lens, because one of the things that I do in Pakistan is that I curate a feminist festival called the Women of the World Festival. It's a global festival that is happening. It's 11 years old, started in the UK, now happens in 60 other countries in the world. Pakistan was the first in South Asia, and I've been curating it for 5 years. But I did have to probably, I think I am not very careful in that festival because I think we're out and proud there. But I did have to be careful that this was a children's book, and Pakistani parents and Pakistani readers tend to be a little bit conservative. However, yes, there is a queer person. We didn't declare her as queer, but you just have to read her story and you know she is. We pretty much say it at the end. Hormat, if I can take your question very quickly about writing more books. It is something that I've been asked to do, told to do, but you know, when I wrote this book, I realized one thing, that many people would see this as a book for girls. And I think that was one of the problems with the marketing for Rebel Girls, right? Because it said Rebel Girls, which is why I didn't have any girl, woman, like it was just called Fearless. That's it, right? I was very careful about naming it something that would make it more accessible. But the truth is, because it's about women, many people think only women should read it. I'm so glad to see that is not the case here today. If I have to be honest, I'm more excited to see the men in the room than the women, because women are who we expect will read the book. Men are who we expect will not read the book, but we both need to read it. So the next book that I want to work on, again, I'm really keen on working on things for young adults, because I think that is a really interesting age. And I wanted to do a book that people would think is a boys' book now, you know what I mean? So if I write another book about women, people will think, oh, it's just another book for girls. So this book is a little bit more different. I don't want to write about amazing men because everybody knows amazing men already. Men are the only people who are publicly amazing, so we already know about them. But what I do want to do is talk about men who've taken another path. And that is something I'm currently researching. As you all know, my process is a slow and very iterative one. So who knows if this will actually happen. But maybe one day it will. And if it does, I hope that you will read that too.
Thank you so much for that, Amine. We really do look forward to, I think I will definitely buy that book and read it out because it sounds really interesting. I think we as people need to look at each other and not put each other in boxes. That is one of the most important things. And it is by reading literature like such that we are able to break those boxes and step outside of those boxes and outside of our comfort zones and actually figure out who and what we can be. So I think I completely agree with you. Whenever I see books about amazing women, whether that be Western or our local women, my first thought is I hope men are reading this because they need to understand what women are capable of, and all they need is a little support and encouragement. They will fly themselves. You don't need to be their wings. You don't need to be anything other than the wind beneath their wings. Just give them the courage and create societies which make it okay for them to experiment, to fall, and to succeed both. And I think if we are able to do that, and then I think we would have come a long way. And conversations like these really, really impact it in the longer run. I mean, we might not see the result immediately, but we are reshaping the way we think.
Absolutely. And thank you so much for having me again. Really privileged to have been here and to have met you all. Best of luck with what you're trying to do with this project, and let's keep breaking borders more than we build them.
Thank you, Amine. If you like, you can just have a small goodbye, for everyone in Bamyan who's watching, and we can close from there.
Thank you so much, everybody. And thank you for letting me visit Bamyan virtually today. I know you have a beautiful country, and I hope one day things are well enough that we can all come and go and meet each other in person. So until then, take care. Keep reading anything you can find, and all the best.
Thank you so much. We would love to host you sometime here in Bamyan, inshallah.
Inshallah. All right. Take care.
Have a nice day. Thank you.
You too.
Bye.
Bye-bye.